Hey guys, Luke here. So in this video we're just going to talk about riding in gusty conditions. We had a YouTube comment from a fellow that was saying that they're kiting in 30 knots gusting to 50, which is absolutely insane, and so we thought we'd make a bit of a video about what you can do if there's a big wind range, super gusty conditions, a couple of tips for how to make it a little bit easier on yourself. So basically, I'll just put my board down, sorry. Basically we're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about what you can do when you're walking around on the land, what you can do in the water to make it a little bit better, and also your equipment. So maybe a different choice in equipment can make it a little bit easier as well. So first off, let's talk about walking around on the land in gusty conditions. The thing about when it's gusty, it's a little bit unpredictable about what's going to happen with your kite. So you need to pay a little bit extra attention to your kite. But one tip is not to have it at 12 o'clock. So if it's really gusty, don't hold your kite at 12, because if you get a big gust, you're going to lift up into the sky. And if you get basically a gust and then a lull, sometimes what your kite can do is sort of race forward, flip upside down, and then fall out of the sky. And this happened to me actually. It's one of the only times I've actually used my safety system in an emergency was exactly that. I was coming in from a session, I was walking across this really rocky sort of bouldery section, and it was really gusty, got a big gust, the kite raced forward and then it turned inside out, and then it started drifting back full slack lines, and I knew it was about to like just explode and just drag me across the rocks basically on my face, and so I fired my safety. So think about that as well. If you ever see that, like especially 30 to 50 knots, if it's like any sort of gust, just be mindful of your kite. Try to have it a little bit off 12. You should really do that all the time, but especially when it's gusty. And yeah, just be aware that that can happen. So when you're on the water, a couple of tips for being on the water. Kind of similar to being on the land, you don't want to have your kite too low, and you don't want to have it at 12. You sort of want to have it at about 45 degrees, so that, or a little bit higher than that. And the main reason is when it's really gusty, you want to be able to lean into it and really try and combat that with your weight. And if your kite's a bit too low, it's going to pull you off your edge a lot when you get a big gust. And same with on the land, you want to be able to lean into it. So you want to sort of try and counteract some of those big gusts with your weight there. So basically, on the water, try not to have your kite too low. You don't want to have it at 12 obviously, and because it's going up and down, you might have to move the kite around a lot as well, but just be mindful that you can have it at about 45 degrees and above. And then let's talk about some equipment. So obviously the best way to counteract, you can see it's a bit gusty today, so it's a perfect example, but the best way to counteract a gust is obviously sheeting in and sheeting out, because that's where you can immediately, if you're sort of flexible in your arm and you're not being too stiff, you can sheet out when the gust hits, and you can sheet in when it's not. And that's really the reason that you can sheet in and out on a kite. And so if you're really riding gusty conditions frequently, I would try and find a bar that allows you to adjust your throw. So you can see I can adjust my throw length on this bar, and basically what that allows me to do is set the throw length to my maximum arm length. So then if you get a big gust, you can sheet way out and you can pull right in. It increases that travel that you can get. With my old equipment, I sort of had a stopper ball that was a bit shorter, and so I found that really uncomfortable, because sometimes I'd be riding along and then there's a big gust and you go to sheet out and it's like bang into the stopper ball, and that's not very helpful, because then you really feel it gives you that big jerk. So think about that with your equipment. Get something that you can adjust that throw length, set it to your maximum arm length, and that's going to really make it a bit more comfortable. Of course, choosing the right kite size as well. You sort of want to be in the middle of that range. You don't want to be getting lifted up every time there's a gust, and you don't want to have nothing every time there's a lull. So try and get right in the middle of that range, which will help as well. And then let's talk about kites. So with a kite, you sort of want to have that lower aspect kite, which is sort of deeper from front to back. The wider that is in the center of the kite there, it's going to ride out those gusts. It's going to be a smoother feeling kite. And a lot of the sort of wave dedicated kites are just naturally that shape. They're a bit smoother. They sort of drift a little bit, so they might feel a little more stable when you get those gusts, those ranges. So just think about that with your kite design. Something a little, like I said, those wave dedicated kites sometimes can be more comfortable in those super gusty conditions as well. I think that's about it for this video. So hopefully that was some tips for gusty conditions. Hope that helps. Luke here, and I'll see you in the next video.